semicolon, till day, right bracket, please. LOL, BRB, WTF, and OMG. LOL, colon, hyphen, right parentheses.
Let's talk about the semicolon. The origin of the semicolon can be traced back to the Italian printer Aldus Manutius the Elder. He used it to separate words that were opposite in meaning and to mark off interdependent statements. It has more uses nowadays. In addition to inventing the semicolon, it's interesting to note his two other notable accomplishments. Aldus Manutius the Elder also produced small format editions of classical texts, and he designed many different fonts. In 1560, the semicolon was introduced into English. A London printer, Henry Denham, used semicolons regularly. We can see them in the publication of A Golden Chain by Thomas Rogers. The general use of the semicolon in English began in 1591. William Shakespeare used them in his sonnets, and Ben Jonson was the first notable English writer to use them quite often. By the late 18th century, semicolons were widely used throughout Europe. In terms of English usage, the semicolon has a few purposes, and it has other purposes in terms of computer programming and mathematical computations. As punctuation became more prevalent in writing, poet Samuel Coleridge said that the semicolon is far more common in the elder English classics. It was perhaps used in excess by them, but the disuse seems a worse evil. Coleridge also said that semicolons hit a speed bump with Romanticism's craze for the dash. However, in 1848, Edgar Allan Poe said he was mortified by printers once again using too many semicolons. Poe is the last famous writer documented complaining about the semicolon's popularity. By 1865, a grammarian bragged of the rejection of the eternal semicolons of our ancestors, and that the semicolon had been gradually disappearing, not only from newspapers but from books. So much that instances could now be produced of entire pages without a single semicolon. From the 1850s to present-day English, it's virtually impossible to find anybody claiming a real prevalence of semicolons in writing. A 1995 study tallying punctuation in period texts found a serious drop in semicolon usage between the 18th and the 19th centuries, from about 68 semicolons per 1,000 words to just about 18 semicolons per 1,000 words. Research documents that the steepest semicolon drop-off came in the mid-19th century, which is a finding that matches the gap between Poe's complaint and the 1865 rejection of semicolons. Technology is a likely suspect in such a shift, and if we consider what debuted in the 1850s that might have radically changed language usage, we can come up with the telegraph. Poe's comment was 3 years before the founding of Western Union, and that is when the semicolon usage began to slump. Punctuation and telegrams were charged at the same rate as words, and their high price, $5 per word or $5 per punctuation, made it so people began using short, punchy phrases without barely any punctuation. 20th century writers, such as George Orwell, disdained the semicolon. Kurt Vonnegut once informed a Tufts audience that all semicolons do is show that you've been to college. Semicolons have occasionally made the news. In 1977, the New York Police Department speculated that there was a killer who may have been a freelance journalist because of his use of a semicolon in his taunting letters. American doctor and essayist Lewis Thomas said, "I have grown fond of semicolons in recent years. It is almost always a greater pleasure to come across a semicolon than a period. The period tells you that this is that. If you don't get all the meaning you wanted or expected, anyway, you got all the writer intended to parcel out, and now you have to move along. But with a semicolon, there you get a pleasant little feeling of expectancy. There is more to come. Read on. It will get clearer." Let's talk about the colon. It is a sign of a pause midway in length between the semicolon and the period. It can often be replaced by a comma or a period. It's used less frequently than it was 50 to 75 years ago, but still comes in handy when writing a list after the words "as follows" or "the following." It can also create slight dramatic tension if used a certain way, like, "Dr. Branscombe had one desire in life, to study the origin and history of the English language." The use of the colon symbol was introduced to the English language around 1600. Luca Seriani was the pioneer of the colon for Italian usage, but it is for the most part valid for English and for other languages. The colon informs the reader of what follows, or it explains or enumerates what is referred to before the colon. The colon symbol is also used in math, logic, computing, time, internet usage, and so on. Punctuation conventions change based on the needs of the speakers and hearers, and then the writers and the readers, and finally the printers, who need regular spelling and punctuation patterns to calculate how much type and paper a given text will use up. Blame the printers and science for spelling and punctuation regularization, but just know conventions have always existed. In the December 1st, 1961 edition of Life magazine, Robert Frost was quoted saying, "Life is tons of discipline. Your first discipline is your vocabulary, then your grammar and your punctuation, then in your exuberance and bounding energy, you say you're going to add to that. Then you add rhyme and meter, and your delight is in that power." Grammar is logical. Grammar has a certain structure to it. It presides over sentences, and it rules language, and it governs composition.
Judgment Day. Come on, baby girl, let me see those legs before I get flattened away. I wait, yeah, I wait for something good, for something great. Stopping in somebody's old hometown, gotta get that midnight meal. If you can't get behind your own life, get behind the driving wheel and go, just go. Find a place that you don't know. Ran into a friend just the other night, got a badge, he's a local cop.